Have Basic Education spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga here with us in studio just to give us some reaction on this. Elijah, very disturbing to hear what these teenagers are telling our viewer. This is a clear example of what the Basic Education Department has always said in terms of how that entire community failed these children.
Yeah, it's really disturbing watching this. It's the first time that we get to hear what could have taken place inside that venue. And their experiences, you can tell that they are traumatized, and that trauma will be with them for a very long time. But you can see that the organization of this had something to do with schooling as well. You know, they organize this in the name of school, pens down. It's got to do with the end of term, end of exams, and then they choose to go have fun in this particular way. And in this case, it's become very disastrous. It's very sad. Those young kids need a lot of help.
They do, and I mean, we've heard, for instance, Minister Angie Motshekga, every time she'd go to a school when something has happened or she's celebrating something, she'd normally say "Bana baka." I'm just wondering how she reacted when you met as a department after hearing what happened on Sunday.
Yeah, she was shocked. In fact, even yesterday at Rema, where we are running the Coral Estate Fort, she spoke at length about it. She was concerned. She cautioned those young people that are there against activities such as this one. She said, you know, there are other constructive things that you could do to have fun and relax, but this is not one of them, especially if you look at the type of venue and the way it's been designed. It's not for young people. These types of things are not for the young and vulnerable, especially when you hear what these kids are saying, that no adults were allowed in there. So the question is, how come that such a large number of young people, mostly underage, were able to make their way through into that venue without the knowledge or without the supervision or without anyone adult knowing what is taking place in there? If this disaster had not taken place, we wouldn't know about this type of event having taken place in that place in the manner that has posed danger to these young people. So it's really concerning. It calls for a reflection as a society to say, what is it that we really need to do to bring our children? I mean, there's been a debate this week about the role of parents, the role of society, and the role of the persons that own these types of enterprises. As education, we've always complained and protested to authorities that allow these types of establishments to be allowed to operate in schools where learners easily access these things. So we really need to reflect and say, what is it that government can do and its entities that are responsible for legalizing these types of establishments.
And I mean, looking at what happened particularly in the Eastern Cape, quite disappointing, because they were one of the provinces that actually improved during the announcement of the matric results this year. And when you look at the history of the Eastern Cape and how they've performed previously, having not performed so well, this also explains why it looks like kids there don't have those recreational facilities to keep themselves busy.
Well, the recreational facilities are there. You know, as I'm speaking to you right now, the DG is addressing young people in Bushbuckridge. He was in KZN yesterday and was in the Eastern Cape a day before that, visiting camps. So for matrics, those that are 16 and 17 there, some of them should be in matric. You should be in camps where your colleagues are. So that's what you need to be thinking about. How do I improve my marks? Yes, the term has come to an end, but for you, it's a new beginning. You need to be preparing to go to those remote camps. That's why we take them away from their own communities to those places so that they can continue to focus on learning. Recreational activities are there. We always suggest reading clubs. We always suggest sporting activities. As I said, up to 10,000 young people right now are at Rema, where they are participating as the school choral estate fort. So that's what we do during school breaks, and we would have expected that those kids would have opted for such activities. If you didn't make it here, you could do something else similar that's constructive. But alcohol cannot be the first option. Partying in this type of way where it's Sunday morning, you're still there. When did you get there? You know, why is it that no one has come looking for you throughout the night? So there's just so many questions that we really need to start asking ourselves and say, how do we fix this? Because, education can only do so much. You learn, yes, but there has to be a break. And it's what happens during that break that really it needs to be considered seriously.
Maybe there should be more, I don't know, communication and more partnership with the Department of Education and Social Development, so that the Education Department doesn't find itself, like you said, trying to take these children out of those communities. There should be these facilities in their communities as well, and people who are in the education and social development system getting paid to make sure that these children are at those facilities. But very quickly, does life orientation also feature, for instance, education around alcohol abuse, who's allowed to drink, etc.?
Absolutely, it's there. All of these things are there. You see, the problem here is crowd behavior. You know, when they get together and it's a large number, they influence each other. It's called peer pressure. It's there in the curriculum as such, clearly defined and taught. But, you know, when an avenue like this one happens, and this, I mean, social media as well. I mean, they were talking there about Facebook. One posts and the rest just follow. And they get there, they found that the benefits that were promised are actually there. And then they just invite each other and they end up overcrowding that place. So that is what's happening, the role of social media and how we are using it. Is it for good or is it for bad? In this case, it was a complete and utter disaster.
All right, Mr. Mhlang, I'm going to ask you to just stay a little bit with us. I want to take you to Cape Town now, where we find our reporter Lindsay Dentlinger. She's with Equal Education, which is outside Parliament to hand over a memorandum of demands today. They want proposed changes to school infrastructure laws scrapped. They believe it will remove deadlines to provide the basics such as water, electricity, classrooms, libraries, and etc. in schools. Let's go to Lindsay Dentlinger, who is outside Parliament for us. Lindsay, just tell us exactly what those pupils and civil society organisation believes will happen after these changes were gazetted.
So, Maseko, as you pointed out, outside Parliament now, I'm just going to let Balungile show you learners here from several schools here in Cape Town. They are building their ideal classroom and at the same time also protesting against what they say is just not adequate enough public infrastructure for so many schools across the country in so many provinces. And of course, as you can see from their posters, quite upset by what is planned by the Department of Basic Education, which is to push out those deadlines for ensuring that all schools have the most basic and the most critical of infrastructure, so to optimize learning. And so that's what you're seeing right now here outside Parliament, students building this classroom, painting, sticking, pasting to build this classroom that they want the minister to see as a representation of what they want for all learners across the country. And with me I have a grade 9 learner from the Fuleni High School to tell us a little bit about why she has joined this protest here today during the school holidays. Sisipo, why have you come out here today to protest?
We came out to protest because we want answers from Engineer Mutere. We want to know how can he propose new changes to the skill infrastructure law, because that means we will continue seeing school falling apart for many more years to come, which is seriously undermining the right to the basic education. We want to know how can we do that.
Tell us a little bit about the school that you attend. What kind of infrastructure is lacking at your school?
The school I've been schooling at, I grew up in this 10K, so I learned from the primary school, which is Tongwane Primary School. The school has no fences and the classes are overcrowded, which is a legal disadvantage to many children because we are not all equal in a way of understanding. So the teacher taking care of more than 50 children, that doesn't make sense. And the textbooks that are tiered apart, you'll find out that 60% of the class doesn't have textbooks and only 40% that got textbooks. So we got to share all those textbooks, and we've got poor basics of education and less access to e-resources. We have no internet in our school, we have no libraries, we have we are not safe and we have no sanitation. We'll find out that we drink water from the river in order for the foods to be cooked, in order for the nutrition to be provided. We had to fetch water from our homes. We had to fetch water from the river. That was the situation in my primary school.
Thank you very much, Sipho. So Masego, you hear some of what learners across the country, thousands of learners go through every day just to get to a classroom and hope to learn. Overcrowded classrooms. You heard from Sipho, no Wi-Fi, no internet, no libraries. And so these are some of the aspects that the Equal Education and these students here today very upset about, that the Basic Education Department not living up to their promises of meeting deadlines to ensure that all schools have these very basic minimum infrastructure for learners to learn.
Lindsay Dentlinger outside Parliament in Cape Town for us. Mr. Mhlanga, you heard those pupils. They seem to believe that the new changes or proposed changes that have been gazetted are an attempt by the department to not fast-track, its mandate to make sure that there's equal learning, equal infrastructure for everyone. Just clarify this for us.
Yeah, I hope they use the school holidays as well to read the entire document, because I don't believe that they did. I think that they were just given a small section of the document as it appears in the Government Gazette with the proposed amendments. We are not removing the timelines. What we are doing is to make revisions on a whole range of things. Remember, the regulations themselves, they make provision for a review and amendments. So we are doing that, and you do that once we have implemented them for some time and we have learned some lessons based on practical implications of what we've been trying to do, and then you make the necessary adjustments. So one thing that we need to clear is that there will never be a final deadline where you say all schools have everything that they need. It will never happen. It's an ongoing project. When one school turns 1 year old, another one is turning 70 years old, which means it's falling apart, it needs to be fixed. Another one somewhere has been closed down because there are no longer people in that area. So there will be a lot of dynamics that will be happening. And there's also an increase in terms of the demand for spaces in schools in certain areas. So we need to be alive to such dynamics that are taking place and then make the necessary adjustments. But what we are changing is much bigger than what they are saying. But the other thing is that I'm hoping that the placards that they've written will not end up as placards. The protest is good. We like it because it mobilizes other young people to be conscious of what they need to do as young people. But it's important that they convert those into comprehensive input that the department will consider when processing all the feedback that we're going to get from members of the public. So we are not shifting the goalposts as they've been saying. We're actually tightening the space and making sure that the deliverables are clear for all provinces, everyone doing everything.
So you say the changes that you're making are much bigger than what these pupils in Equal Education think.
Yes.
Just elaborate that further. What do you mean much bigger?
Okay, bigger as in it's not just about deadlines. It's also about the tables which we had put in the norms themselves to say how many learners do you need in a school for you to be able to provide a certain number of toilets, for example. How many learners should be inside a classroom for you to be able to build a hall or a laboratory of whatever type. So there's all sorts of calculations that we've had to make. But because the population is growing, there's also growing demand for space in schools all over the place. You can't keep things going in the same way as it was happening 10 years ago. COVID also came in and taught us some new lessons. We need to factor that in as well. So we are saying, here's an opportunity for you. Give us your input. How do you feel about these proposals? The minister will listen. Some of the things that we have in the current norms were the input of Equal Education themselves. So we are saying, not just them, but everybody else. Please come through, give us how you think this should be done. In terms of the deadline, we are agreeable to that. We'll be issuing a statement later. We'll give a new deadline. We are not married to one deadline. We need people to have sufficient time to access the document. It's also on the website, so people can easily get it there, but it's much broader than just the deadline. So let's broaden our scope as well when we consider this matter, so that we can make comprehensive informed input.
And I'm going to ask you another question, but I want the viewer to remember that us as South Africans also have the responsibility to go into these websites and comment whenever we don't agree to something that government has proposed, and we give them ideas, because at the end of the day, they are carrying the mandate that we have given them. So we need to still comment and tell them what we don't like. So please do that. Mr. Mhlanga, in terms of what the pupils are saying, though, hearing this young girl saying that where she's from, she has no internet. Something as simple as the internet, and we're busy talking fourth industrial revolution. They have no library in 2022.
Okay, let me talk about the libraries for a minute. We have schools which have libraries which we have given to them. When we go back to those schools, you find that that classroom that had been converted into a classroom is locked since the last time when we launched it. They are not used because the school doesn't believe there is value in that. So that's concerning. That's what we have found in some of the schools where we have been. So in a school, a library is not a building with lots of books. It could also be a trolley with books that are in there that you push from class to class. We call that a mobile library. So you'll find that it's there. It can be there. It can be used. Have we considered that option? Is it there or not? So those are some of the things that we can do. In terms of connectivity, that's not our business. We talk to the Department of Digital Technologies, who then talk to the telecoms companies to then come to our schools to install these things. So we are beneficiaries of that service. If it's not available in that area, we will go and report that it's not available. Then the relevant department must bring it to us. And as we're rolling out all these robotics and coding subjects that we're bringing to our schools, we are piloting so that we can learn these lessons. And we have regular interaction with these companies so that they know that there are underserviced areas where we urgently need these things, so that we can bring this equipment to all our schools for our learners to benefit.
Mr. Mhlanga, and while you speak like that, I hope ESCOM is also listening, because we cannot reach a fourth industrial revolution without electricity. You know, it's just not going to work. You know, the promises that they keep making, they need to actually fulfill. That was Elijah Mhlanga, spokesperson for Basic Education. All right, still